The millionaire walked into the nursing home surrounded by cameras, reporters, and flashing lights, ready to make a grand donation for charity. But what he found inside broke every piece of his heart. As he passed through the long, dim hallway, he heard a weak, trembling voice singing the same lullaby he used to fall asleep to as a child. He froze. That song. Only one person in the world ever sang it that way. Slowly, he turned and saw her, an elderly black woman, frail, eyes tired yet filled with warmth. His breath caught. "Mom?" he whispered. The room went silent. Staff and reporters looked on in shock as the millionaire dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He had spent 30 years searching for her, but fate had led him right back to the woman who had saved his life. 30 years ago, a young boy was left at the doorstep of a small wooden house during a stormy night. That house belonged to Grace, a kind-hearted black woman who had nothing but love to give. She took the boy in, wrapped him in a blanket, and raised him as her own. Years passed, and the boy, now named Michael, grew up watching Grace struggle to make ends meet. She worked double shifts, skipped meals, and prayed every night for his success. And one day, her prayers came true. Michael earned a scholarship, built a company from scratch, and became one of the richest men in the country. But success came with distance. Caught in the chaos of wealth, Michael lost touch with his past and the woman who made him who he was. Now, decades later, standing in a nursing home to make a charity donation, he had no idea destiny was about to reunite him with the woman who had given him everything, including his name, his faith, and his heart. Sometimes, the richest moments in life aren't found in money, but in the people who never stopped loving you. As Michael stepped into the quiet nursing home, the smell of antiseptic and wilted flowers filled the air. He adjusted his expensive suit, his diamond watch glinting under the fluorescent light. The director of the home, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, greeted him warmly. "Mr. Williams, thank you for your generous donation. It means the world to these residents," she said softly. Michael nodded politely. "Just doing what I can. I believe in giving back." He smiled for the camera flashes as local reporters captured the moment. Yet beneath that smile, a strange unease tugged at his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. As he toured the facility, he saw elderly faces, forgotten souls staring blankly at the walls, clutching faded photographs of families that never visited. Each room whispered a story of loneliness. But when he reached room 27, he froze. Inside sat an old woman with silver hair, her frail hands holding a worn-out Bible. Her face was thin, but there was something about her, something hauntingly familiar. She looked up slowly, her tired eyes lighting up for the first time in years. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. The billionaire felt the ground slip from beneath him. That voice, that gentle tone. It couldn't be. He took a hesitant step closer, studying her face. Then it hit him. The same eyes that used to watch over him when he was sick. The same voice that sang lullabies on stormy nights. "Grace?" he whispered back, his throat tightening. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded weakly. "I prayed every day that I'd see you again. I knew you'd come." Michael's mind raced. How could this be? How could the woman who saved him, the woman who gave him everything, be here, alone, forgotten, abandoned in a cold nursing home? He turned to the director, his voice breaking with disbelief. Why didn't anyone tell me she was here?" "She raised me." The director looked down, ashamed. "She never told anyone who you were. She said you had a destiny. She didn't want to be a burden." Michael sank to his knees beside her bed, his trembling hand reaching for hers. "You were never a burden. You were my whole world," he said, tears streaming down his face. Grace smiled faintly. "You made me proud, son. I saw you on TV once. I told the nurse, that's my boy." Michael felt a wave of guilt crash over him. All the awards, the mansions, the luxury, none of it mattered anymore. What good was success if the person who built your foundation was left to fade away in silence? He turned to his assistant, voice filled with conviction. "Call the lawyer. Effective immediately, this home is under new ownership. No one here will ever be forgotten again." As the staff watched in awe, Michael gently lifted Grace into his arms. "You're coming home, Mom," he whispered, and for the first time in 30 years, she smiled without pain. The air outside the nursing home was thick with emotion. A crowd had gathered, reporters, staff, and residents peering from windows. They watched as Michael Williams, one of the world's richest men, carried an elderly black woman in his arms like a sacred treasure. His limousine waited at the curb, but Michael didn't rush. Every step felt like a lifetime, a journey through every forgotten memory. The cameras flashed, microphones pointed, and journalists shouted, "Mr. Williams, who is she?" He stopped, holding Grace close. His voice trembled but carried the power of truth. "She's my mother," he said, "the woman who saved me when the world gave up on me." The crowd went silent. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, humbled by the weight of his words. Grace blinked through tears, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, baby." Michael's chest ached. "You gave me everything, Mom, and I left you behind." Grace shook her head gently. "No, you didn't. You were out there changing lives, like I knew you would. That was my dream for you." Her words hit him like a wave of forgiveness. For years, he'd built his empire thinking success could fill the emptiness of his past. But now, holding the woman who gave him love when he had nothing, he finally understood what true wealth meant. He turned to the cameras, his voice steady and commanding. "For years, my mother worked as a nurse, raising me with compassion and faith. When no one wanted a poor black boy, she did. Today, I'm giving back, not out of guilt, but gratitude. No elder should live forgotten. No love should fade into silence." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears streamed down faces. Even the toughest reporters couldn't hold them back. Michael looked at Grace, smiling through his tears. "You're coming home to the house you built, with your heart." Grace's frail hand touched his cheek. "Home," she whispered softly. As the car door closed, the nursing home workers stood in reverent silence. The billionaire who once built skyscrapers had just rebuilt something far greater, a bond between mother and son, healed after 30 years of separation. Because in that moment, love became justice. If you believe love always finds its way, write justice in the comments. The next morning, headlines spread like wildfire across every screen. Billionaire reunites with long-lost adoptive mother. Donates $50 million to forgotten seniors. News anchors called it the story that melted the world's heart. But for Michael and Grace, it wasn't about fame. It was about redemption. In the quiet garden of Michael's mansion, Grace sat wrapped in a soft blanket watching the sunrise. Birds chirped in the distance, and Michael walked toward her, no longer the cold billionaire everyone knew. He was her boy again. Humble, grounded, grateful. "Do you like your new home, Mom?" he asked softly. Grace smiled, her eyes glowing with peace. "Home isn't the walls, son. It's where love lives. And you brought me back to it." Her words carried the power of generations, of resilience, faith, and forgiveness that transcended pain. A few weeks later, Michael launched the Grace Foundation, dedicated to supporting elderly black women abandoned in nursing homes, victims of poverty and racial neglect. Within months, hundreds of women were rescued, given dignity, care, and family again. At the grand opening, Michael stood on stage beside Grace, holding her hand as he addressed the world. Racism tried to erase stories like my mother's society, forgot the hands that built it. But today, we're rewriting that story. This isn't charity, that's justice. Applause filled the hall. Journalists wiped their tears. For the first time in years, Grace's name was celebrated, not hidden in a file, not lost in the system, but shining as a symbol of love's endurance. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and cameras turned off, Grace whispered to her son, "You turned your pain into purpose." "That's the real victory." Michael nodded, holding her close. No empire, no bank, no award could ever compare to this moment. "Mom, you taught me what true power is. Compassion." The world remembered their story not as one of wealth, but of restoration. A story where racism was defeated not by revenge, but by forgiveness. Because sometimes the strongest justice doesn't shout, it heals. If you believe love conquers hate, type justice in the comments.